Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the February 16th meeting of the Wallingford Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight's decisions will be published in the Record Journal on Friday, February 19th, 2016. The effective date of your variance will be on Friday, February 19th, 2016. The date a certified copy is recorded on the land records. The statutory 15-day appeal period will expire on Sunday, March 6, 2016. If you commence operations and/or construction during the appeal period, you do so at your own risk. Before we start the meeting, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. First hearing tonight is 15033. Oops, let's shut that baby.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Laughlin.
How are you, Mr. Burney?
Good.
I'm Jim Laughlin, a lawyer here in town, on behalf of Joe Marino, the applicant. The property is on South Orchard Street. We're looking for a variance that would allow for a two-family home on the property. Most importantly, thank you for what you do. Sometimes it's an ungrateful job that you do, but you can tell by what has transpired in Wallingford and grown in Wallingford is good, attributable in part to your efforts. Thank you. Mr. Marino is good at what he does. I've known him for 25 years. I haven't quite figured out what that is, but he does it well. He was born in Italy. He moved here as a boy. He made some good investments that he supports his family with, and he also supports the town of Wallingford. He is a healthy taxpayer. He keeps his properties clean for the good of the town as well as for his family. At the same time, Mr. Marino is not good as an attorney. So although his applications have been here before, both he and his brother, I hope that I can bring something to the table, my experience in presenting materials to you and other boards, as well as what I've learned in the 25 years of my practice, that might help you see what I see in making this a good application. For instance, everybody pays attention to a hardship as being grounds for a variance. There are other ways, there are other legal grounds for variance as well. And in this case, you'll see in my application that reliance on what has transpired in the past can be grounds for variance. And I'm not sure what you have in your file, so if you don't mind, I'd like to just hand out some additional stuff that you could take a look at. So the two things that I've given to you, and again, I apologize if you've seen them already. I'm not sure what you've seen. The thinner of the two is correspondence from the town. Other departments don't have any objection to this application. And then the cover sheet that I've highlighted in red shows that it was recommended by staff for its December meeting when it was thought it was going to be a three-family application. This is only a two-family application that we're looking for. You also see underlined on this second paragraph, number 2, that there are lack of reliable records, which will feed into what I'm going to introduce to you in a little bit. And you'll also see that along this street there are 6 three-family dwellings, 9 two-family dwellings, and a 4-family dwelling. And one of the dwellings directly adjacent to this subject property that we're talking about also has a physical therapy, a masseuse there where they do physical therapy work as an in-home occupation. The second packet that I've given to you is a printout of a lawsuit involving this very property and Mr. Marino. A few reasons why I'd like to have you take a look at it. On page 2, in the highlighted part, you'll see that Mr. Marino represented himself in the application to the Zoning Board of Appeals from which this lawsuit arose out of. On page 3, you'll see admonition from the court, highlighted again. Considering the evidence in the light most favorable to the defendant, the court concludes that the town may have made contradictory statements regarding the status of the subject premises. It is not clear as a matter of law that contradictory statements of municipal employees are sufficient to meet the defendant's substantial burden. This case that upheld the town of Wallingford's action basically turned it around and presented it to you for further review. There was no official remand, but we are coming to you again after this decision based upon the final admonition from the court on page 5. Before concluding, this court notes that the facts in this matter are not fully supportive of all the actions of the plaintiff, town of Wallingford. The record clearly establishes that agents of the town have taken inconsistent and contradictory positions regarding the subject premises. Skipping down a little bit. All of this suggests the possibility of impropriety, selective enforcement, and potential unfairness. While the facts and the circumstances in this case do give the court pause, there is insufficient evidence to allow this court to invoke the doctrine of municipal estoppel. And finishing down on the last sentence of this paragraph, similarly, the court directs the city, Wallingford, to render consistent all of its official representations regarding the subject premises. We do not claim that staff at any time has done anything underhanded. Rather, I have enjoyed an excellent rapport with this staff, as well as staff with Linda Bush, who was here before. Always very helpful. But Mr. Marino bought into this property at a time when the facts and circumstances were very confusing to him. And the court acknowledged that confusion. The last thing you want to do is take a decision like this and have people read it at the last minute. That's why I highlighted it. Plus, what you do is based on common sense as much as it is the law. And so at the same time that I presented this lawsuit for you, I presented endorsement in the file, talking about support for the application, in keeping with the neighborhood, 6 3-families, 9 2-families, 1 4-family, an in-home occupation where there's physical therapy and masseuse, together with a good, sound family, a good citizen of the town of Wallingford. Based on all of this, we ask that you approve this application not based on hardship, but another legal rationale for a variance, and that is reliance on what has transpired in the circumstances that are revealed in the file supporting this application. I'm available for questions, as is Mr. Marino.
I have a question for you, Mr. Laughlin. If we did grant this application, would this just be a 2-family house? Because in this packet of information we have, it mentions a business being conducted out of that residence or out of that dwelling.
To my knowledge, and Mr. Marino will confirm, yes, it's going to be a 2-family. There will not be any business. I don't know of any businesses having been run out of this property at any time.
And this is going to be a dwelling in the basement?
That's correct.
Anyone else have any questions for you?
Yes, I have a few questions. So your proof that the town continues to be inconsistent is from a letter signed by an employee who left within weeks of signing the letter?
No, not at all. I just presented this to you mostly so you could see that it's in keeping with the neighborhood. It's not just us saying that there's a bunch of 2 families and 3 families, but it's also record.
And this decision brings 2 really important questions to my mind. The first question is, it was a decision in which the Town of Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission was a party. Did you go to the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission?
I did not. This is a decision from years ago.
Yeah, that's my second question. The decision is dated July 11th, 2008. You're here nearly 8 years later.
That's right.
Why?
It's just the enforcement procedures in town. I'm not blaming anyone, but that's because everyone is busy. But that's just how long has it taken to come back after this decision.
Just for the record, are you saying that you applied to have this hearing in August of 2008?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
Because you said it's the procedures. And I just want to make sure that, we don't have procedures in town that would
No.
require.
As soon as the prior zoning enforcement officer reached out to Mr. Marino and I immediately submitted the variance application. It was just that it took that long for the variance application to be needed.
So the judge issued an injunction and said that you can no longer use this house as a 2-family house.
Correct.
And then when the zoning enforcement officer came by, lo and behold, it turns out he's been violating a court order for 7 years.
I guess it could be that. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the only reason that he needs to have it be a 2-family house is it so that he can collect the rent?
Yes, but that's not really the point. The point here is that it's in keeping with the neighborhood and the court's admonition that under this high burden that's placed on a applicant for a variance, on a high burden of trying to prove this reliance, the court turned it back to you saying, directs the city to render consistent all of its official representations regarding the subject premises. All of this suggests the possibility of impropriety, selective enforcement, and potential unfairness. While the facts and circumstances in this case do give the court pause, before concluding, this court notes that the facts in this matter are not fully supportive of all of the actions of the plaintiff. The record clearly establishes the agents of the town have taken inconsistent and contradictory positions regarding the subject premises. I opened my comments by saying absolutely nothing underhanded. But at the same time, if the town is equally at fault, as is Mr. Marino, giving his strong record, his tax base that he provides for the town of Wallingford, suggests that, yes, based on those circumstances, maybe it didn't meet the elevated standard that was required for Judge Robinson. But given the common sense, in keeping with the town's, in keeping with the neighborhood, and with Mr. Marino's good track record, there is legal grounds for a variance.
Is this the final decision? Did he have?
That's the printed decision.
Did he appeal the decision? Did
No.
he have the judge reconsider it in any way?
I was not
Did he
party
move
to
for a
that
new
action.
trial?
Absolutely
This
not.
is the final decision.
And we're turning back to you after that decision for the common sense application. Here we are. You are the finders of fact with the authority to grant this variance if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you do, either way, the decision will be upheld.
Okay. No more questions.
Mr. Rice?
I think that Mr. Laughlin brought up the fact that this neighborhood now has several different multi-dwelling family homes. I did visit the area. I looked at the parking there. he certainly has enough parking. The apartment seems like it's in good shape. And in speaking with Mr. Marino, he indicated to me that he wanted this for use of his son. I don't know if he's going to rent it later or if he's renting it to his son, but I think that, even though looking at all these court documents and everything from the past, that neighborhood has changed considerably. And I think this commission should look at that and perhaps approve this. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We have in our packet that was sent out to us a record of sort of the zoning proceedings on this property going back. And it looks like, based on that record that we were provided, going all the way back to 1982, there's a record of variance being denied for multifamily use of the home. And then several other denials all the way up through the court case that you referenced. I guess what just really bothers me is that there was clear denial all along, and yet it seems as though the applicant has decided to use the property as a two-family dwelling anyway. So I just wanted to draw attention to that. It really bothers me that sort of we've been here since 1982 doing the same thing, and yet we're here again in violation.
If I could just respond to that. My opening remarks were that Mr. Marino is not native to the United States. He was born in Italy. He comes here with a language barrier and a little bit of old school. I also like to think that lawyers bring good to the table. Lots of times people think the only way you can grant a variance is if there's a hardship. There's a lot of misunderstanding that surrounds the law. And I've been doing this for 25 years. And so I mentioned the judge's admonition because here we are facing you guys again with the opportunity for the common sense. There was a chance of impropriety noted by the judge. It's in keeping with the neighborhood. Mr. Marino has an excellent record in the town of Wallingford, and for that reason, I believe there's good grounds for granting this variance.
I don't doubt that we have the ability to grant the variance. I guess my problem is just that we've had the ability to grant the variance several times before. We've said no. The court has found that, it was improper, and yet it still happened anyway.
In each of those, yes, no doubt, but at the same time, there was no lawyer who represented Mr. Marino when he approached the boards in the past.
That's fair. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
A question for staff. Casey, in that catalog that Mr. Desjardins has mentioned to, there's an entry on October 13th. Can you explain or highlight or give us some background? Tom Hogarty was out there and issued a cease and desist order on October 14th, 2015. What prompted him to do that?
If you note right before that, following the injunction that was brought in 2008 in the judgment in favor of the town, the log was actually closed a few months later in October of 2008. The the Corporation Council at the time found that there was no second unit because at that time the second story unit had been removed. The log was the violation was reopened in 2011 because Mr. Marino crossed out his one family valuation notice with the tax department and wrote it in as a two-family. So at that point, we reopened the file. There was I think in 2015, Mr. Hogarty was going back through, I think there had been some back and forth in between, but I'm not positive about that. And then in 2015, when Tom was here, he started going back through old violations that were troublesome violations that we'd had issues with that were persistent violations, and this was one of them. This is one of the oldest violations we had on the log. So he went back and did an inspection and noted this apartment in the basement.
Thank you.
So Joe himself let the town know that, no, it wasn't a one-family, it was a two-family, and he wanted to pay more tax because it was a two-family.
He tried to get it verified as a two-family when it's not legally one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My concern here is that the court said for all the foregoing reasons, the court grants the plaintiff's application for a permanent injunction and orders the defendant to cease using the premises as a two-family residence unless and until he receives proper authorization from the city to do so. So he just went ahead and ignored the court's orders and didn't do anything and went ahead and still used it as a two-family house. And now he seems to think that he's changed something that the court didn't see, or that the court was made aware of, rather. And my question to Mr. Marino is, what's changed?
Nothing has changed, Mr. Barney. What we do, we use the apartment not to live in there. My son keeps a lot of clothes there, a lot of stuff there. If, for example, if he wants to go and sleep there, he can do it because it will violate the thing. The problem on this house here is, in 1983, originally my brother bought the house. He told me to go to the assessor's office, I get the card. Make sure there was a two-family. I got the card, and we have copies here, it was a two-family. Then when he bought the house and he rented the second floor, he got in trouble. And all these years, he blames me. He blamed me for buying the property that it was supposed to be two-family, and then the town don't allow it to be a two-family. What happened in this house, the original owner, as you guys made a two-family, I guess, illegally, and she hired attorney Farrell. And then what happened, she put the house for sale as a two-family with Kowalski them days. So because I felt guilty, I just switched the property with my brother. I gave him a piece of property that I owned on North Colony, and I took over this on Orchard Street. The bottom line is that there is 3 houses on that street that both the same, all the same. 205, 209, which is mine in the middle, and 211. 205, they have an apartment in a ground floor or basement, whatever you want to call it. They have an apartment, they're renting it. Mine is a beautiful, it's brand new. In fact, I remodeled the whole house year 2000. And at the time, it was on the assessor's office also as a two-family. And I have all the papers here, and I asked the people, can I remodel the way it is? He said, yes. And I have the CO and the way it was, as a two-family. Now, on the other side, 205 has an apartment on the ground floor. I have an apartment on the ground floor. And 211, they have an apartment on the ground floor, which they use for physical therapy business. I'm the only one that has enough parking for the house. I have a garage, parking in the back of the house, park on the side, brand new driveway, I keep the house nice. All my property, whatever property I own here in Wallingford, I keep them like it. I want to have a little credit. I want you guys to know that Wallingford is like my mother. My mother's buried here, my father's buried here, my daughter's buried here. I love this town, and I keep the property really nice. Now, my son, if he wants to leave the house and wants to go, in other words, he can't combine the whole house as a one. He just can't. It doesn't work. I ruined the neighborhood. And I don't want to ruin the neighborhood. I want to keep the neighborhood clean and well. So why hide when he wants to go and sleep there, or he wants to go study and wants some peace and go? Why hide? Why hide? When the apartment is there, it doesn't go anywhere. Why keep it closed? When I can never my son use it? I came here before for an accessory apartment where I live. My other son lives there. You guys are old enough, you guys have children, sometimes the kids don't get along. I have a beautiful apartment there, my son can live there, he can keep an eye on the property, and everything can be fine. I'm just, them days, I don't understand why, those, the neighbors came and complained, but today it looks like nobody showed up. I guess they came to the same, I guess they knew that I'm doing the right thing. And why keep the apartment closed? Why? My son has got clothes in there. He's got some tools. But to sleep there, even if he goes there for 2-3 days a week or a week in a month, he's going to have to hide. Otherwise, it's a violation. I leave it to you good people, judgment. I've been in this town for 51 years. I take pride on my property. I keep him nice. I pay my tax on time. And also, it's not a neighborhood that's strictly one-family neighborhood. As Mr. Larkins pointed out, you have a 4-family. On my left, I have a physical therapy business. On my right, I have a ground apartment that they use it. Why couldn't I have my son use it? Well, I work hard for that. I mean...
Mr. Marino, you've explained yourself. You said there was a CO issued for the apartment?
For the whole house, yes. When I remodeled, there was a CO issue, yeah.
And you had building permits and the house was inspected?
Everything. I can give you... Other words, I don't want to go in the regular, let's say that I just violate things. And when we bought it as a 2-family. And there is the cards here that shows it. Even the assessor has a 2-family. If you want to find out about a piece of property, what do? Even today, I go to the assessor. So now I'm through buying it, and I'm doing it because I'm getting too old. I got my stone ready, waiting for me, with my name on it. But if I ever was going to buy another piece of property in town, I don't want to go to the assessor now. I'll go to the assessor, and I will make sure with the town planner too.
Casey, does he have a CO?
I honestly don't know the answer to that.
You,
I
Mr.
haven't
Barney,
seen that
if you guys want whatever you decide, I provide the CO. I have a CO for the whole house.
Yeah, but was it issued to include the apartment that you made?
Yes. I got a CO, certificate of occupancy, when I remodeled the whole house. It's on town record. People can use a contingency.
Well, I don't have access to the town record right now, but I would like to see us.
I know, but I mean, what I'm saying is, if you guys want to put it as a contingency to look on a CO when I remodel and when I render it, it's okay with me. I know I have them at home. I didn't bring it.
Thank you. I have nothing for you.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Does he have to do any construction-wise to comply with the current not having 2 apartments? Because it doesn't sound like he's even using it as a second apartment. His son stores clothes and sometimes sleeps in a room that's not apartment-worthy.
No, it's composed of living space, or sleeping facilities, bathroom, and cooking facilities. So it's constructed as an apartment, and it could be, and may or may not be being used as an apartment. From your standpoint as the Zoning Board of Appeals, you're looking at the physical construction of it. Is it an apartment or not? And it is.
So what would he have to do to change it so it would no longer be considered a physical apartment?
Either remove the cooking facilities or the bathroom facilities. Make it so that somebody couldn't live there without going into the rest of the house.
Oh. All you gotta do is remove the cooking facilities. It doesn't, you never said your son cooks there. Goes there a couple of times a night and sleeps and stores his
He
suits.
cooks there. He cooks there.
Oh. That's too bad.
Mr. Knickerbocker, the apartment it's on its own.
Take out the bathroom.
All right, so what is going to do when you got to go to the bathroom?
He's gonna go into the house.
Which house?
It's the house that it's attached to.
Oh, the main house.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Knickerbocker, you know, I'm not a lawyer. I make my living by collecting rent and pay the taxes. My son is still a student. He can't afford to take the whole house.
Oh,
Our main point
okay.
is Mr. Marino's not trying to hide anything. He wrote on that tax form, two-family. As soon as he got the violation letter from the prior zoning enforcement officer, he stepped forward. And here we are, we're saying the court recognized some issues. So yes, it didn't see it the way Mr. Marino did. Mr. Marino was not able to match the elevated requirement of proof that you have to do when you get to court. So here you are again faced with the application under the circumstances I discussed. Mr. Marino has a good history here in town of Wallingford. It's in keeping with the neighborhood. And for those reasons, you have the authority to approve this application. That's why we're here.
Does anyone else have any questions? Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of the application? Anyone wish to speak against the application?
Could I make a couple of quick comments, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to get too deep into the history of this property or Mr. Marino's, the status of zoning violations on Mr. Marino's other properties. But I think that in the history that I've provided, there was an application submitted prior to, as the board has pointed out, prior to the purchase by Mr. Marino to legalize this as a two-family house. So there was a record that this was not a legal two-family house, and that was based on the record. The property owner at the time indicated that she was looking to sell it. So this was shortly before it was sold to the Marino family, not the applicant tonight, but he was there when there was a second variance submitted. The applicant, still prior to owning it himself, was present at the hearing and did speak regarding the application. So I don't think that I think it should have been clear that this was not a legal two-family house. What I really want to focus on, though, is sort of the hardship conversation. If this were to come before you tonight and there was no apartment and it was a single-family house, I see no reason why you would grant creation of a two-family house in a single-family zone. When I look at consistency, when I look at the list of use descriptions that was provided of properties in the area, I see single-family, 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 single-family all down this list, especially in the adjacent properties. There are a limited number of multifamilies that are presumably grandfathered in the area. But you know, I don't see this overwhelming amount of multifamily homes listed by the assessor's office in terms of the uses listed. So I have a hard time with this application. I think that, again, what we need to look at, or what the board needs to look at, is there a hardship in the land associated with this proposal? And in the past, the denials, the hardship discussion, the reasons for denials were no hardship other than financial. The board has no jurisdiction because there is no legal hardship shown. There was one more. No hardship shown. So you know, maybe you see something that I don't, but I'm not clear on what the hardship is. Thank you.
Does anyone in the audience wish to speak against this application? Seeing none, I close the public hearing and open it to the commission for discussion and recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation to deny the variance. A 7-year violation of a court order it's tough for me to swallow.
Is there a second? No second. You want to withdraw your?
I'll withdraw my motion.
I make a,
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve this application for the better use of the property without changing the character of the neighborhood.
I second that.
Motion to approve, Mr. Wolfer.
Yes, to approve.
Mr. Knickerbocker.
No.
Mr. Ruzek.
Yes.
Mr. Reif.
Yes.
Mr. Bernie.
Yes. Your application is approved. It's now a two-family house, and your son can cook and stay there without worrying about anything.
Mr. Bernie, I want to thank you so much. And it's not for financial reason. Now, when it gets to my nerves, it's just go home, go to your home and stay there. Don't bother me. You made my life a lot easier, and may God bless you.
Thank you.
I know you many years. God bless you all, gentlemen.
Next application is application 16001 at 906 North Colony Road, Cumberland Farms, wishes to have 2 access points on its site.
Mr. Chairman, this application is for the property that's currently contains the Villa Capri. The current zoning regulations for RF 40, Route 5, zone only allows 1 curb cut onto Route 5. While there are currently 2 curb cuts on the property, this involves an entire redevelopment which would be required to comply with all of the current zoning regulation. The applicant would like to continue to have 2 curb cuts in order to serve the proposed development.
Thank you, Mr. Rosick. Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. I'm here representing the owner and applicant. To my left is Peter Yeske from the First Hartford Corp., and to my right is Mark Grodke, our project engineer from VHB. And I think it may be appropriate to pass out a couple of plans, and also we can put the plans up on the board. If we can use that, Mr. Chairman.
These are nice.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the property, as you know, is 906 North Colony Road. It is 88,424 square feet in size. It has 250 feet of frontage along North Colony Road, and of course, it's developed with the existing building housing the restaurant and reception hall known as the Villa Capri. It is zoned RF 40. The villa was renovated, rebuilt, I think, in 1976, just 40 years ago. And over those 40 years, it has maintained the 2 driveways that are shown on the as-built plan at the bottom of the easel. So there are 2 full driveways currently accessing North Colony Road. Now, the applicant proposes to raise the existing building and to construct a Cumberland Farms, about 4,738 square feet in size, together with the pumping stations that are shown on the plan up on the easel. Mark will go up there in a minute to help in the presentation. The application, as is pointed out, is a request to maintain the 2 existing driveways. You have the 2 existing curb cuts now. We wanted to maintain those. And obviously, as Casey writes in her staff comments, it's the town's position that because we're raising the existing building, that we lose the nonconformity. The fact that those two access points have been there since 1976 is of no longer any moment. It's a new board, so to speak, a new plain board for us to make our presentation. Now, generally, by the way, this restriction about having one access point onto Route 5 was enacted in 1996, I think, according to your records. And as far as the hardship goes, I wanted to point out a few things that are important, I believe. Number one is that typically when there is a restriction for access to a site, those sorts of restrictions are enacted where traffic concerns raise issues of public safety. And here, as Mark will point out in part of the presentation, access to the site, particularly for gasoline tankers, for this, by the way, this permitted use for the site, gasoline tankers will be accessing the site in order to provide product to the underground storage tanks, and the access and the turning movements within the property are best served by having the two access points. The other point that I think is very important is that back in 1996, when this restriction was created, there was no center turning lane, double turning lane, that now exists between CVS and I think it's the paint store. You may recall that shortly, just a short time ago, when the new CVS was built, there was a widening of that portion of 5, or restriping, so that there now is that center turn lane to try to make access, particularly left-hand turns, much easier and much safer. And so one of our arguments is that that did not exist in 1996 when this restriction was first created. Now there is a safer alternative. There is this center lane, again, that Mark can point out in just a minute. So we have that available to this site. Again, between the CVS site and I think it's Sherwin-Williams, there is that additional middle turning lane that makes the movement safer. Now, the site has had two driveways, as we pointed out, since 1976. There is no intent on the part of the applicant to abandon that right. Again, it's the interpretation that this nonconformity is lost by coming in with a new application. I wanted to point out that in the past, when you've been kind enough to grant similar variances, that they've been based on the concept of restraint of trade, and that there are other stations up and down Route 5 that have two access points. You've got a Citgo, a Standard Valero, and a Gulf Station all have two curb cuts, which is, again, pretty much the norm that you would find for the gasoline service station operation. As a matter of fact, the comments to you from the engineering department that I think were part of the comments you received tonight indicated that, again, from an engineering perspective, it would be desirous to have, the two access points. So that's kind of the overview, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Again, in order for this to succeed, to bring in really a new, attractive Cumberland Farms operation. I don't know if you've seen the new buildings. They're spectacular. There's one up in Meriden now. There's one in North Haven and in other areas nearby.
Yeah, we're in the process of expanding this concept statewide.
So with that, I'm going to ask Mark to go up to the board and just provide some greater detail on what I've just offered to you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Mark Grocke, senior engineer with VHB, and as Dennis had pointed out, we are proposing a Cumberland Farms convenience store located at 906 North Colony Road. The convenience store is about 4,700 square feet. There's going to be 8 pumps located directly in front of the store, 3 underground storage tanks, and again, the main reason why we are here for the variance application is because of the 2 curb cuts where one is allowed. If I can just point your direction, this is the existing conditions, Villa Capri, banquet hall. 1 single curb cut located on the south end of the property, and the second one is on the north end of the property. Currently, as it stands today, this property is non-zoning compliant in terms of setbacks, coverage, a number of other zoning parameters, and we're trying, obviously, the best we can to bring it up to code with the new proposed conditions in lieu of the proposed curb cut situation. And the main reason for the necessity of the second curb cut is safety. Obviously, this is going to be a gas station convenience store use. I can understand if it was maybe just a convenience store, you can use smaller delivery vehicles, things of that nature, but it is going to be also a gas station primary source of sales for the business. And to safely circumvent the site, I have shown here a tanker truck movement entering, taking a right turn into the southerly curb cut, stopping at the underground tanks, and continuing out of the north end curb cut. And if any of these curb cuts were limited in any way, keep in mind we still have to go in front of Connecticut Department of Transportation because this says Route 5 under their jurisdiction. But if these curb cuts are limited in any way, the tanker will have a very difficult maneuvering time maneuvering the site and not encroaching, say, over the double yellow line at the driveway. We don't want the tanker to be entering in one driveway and entering the site and encroaching on the other lane of opposite traffic. If we had one curb cut, say if this was the only curb cut, a tanker would have to come around, try to make this very difficult swing maneuver and enter the oncoming lane of traffic to exit the site. Similarly with the northern curb cut, if the tanker were to come into the site, he would have a very difficult time trying to maneuver around any cars that are already at any of the pumps here. So safety is the number one concern with this curb cut configuration.
Mark, if you could point out the center turn lane in the middle of Route 5 that's here now.
Yeah, as Attorney Senaviva had mentioned earlier, it's a little difficult to see. You could probably see it in your packets there, but in Route 5, very recently it has been restriped to allow left turn maneuver movements. So there is an effort to increase the safety in the area. And what this median of this left turn median allows is for safe maneuvering in and out of the site. So we're just trying to combine our site safety with what's already there today.
Anyone have any questions for the gentleman?
I have a quick question. Does the fact that it's like on the kind of the top of a hill, did that come into consideration with respect to the safety or any of that?
Yes, we do look into sight line and sight distances. It does have an incline, but it's not as severe to hinder any sight lines in any direction for the driveways.
How far down does the hill become severe?
Well, we look at it in terms of a maximum sight distance of 500. I think it's actually 445 feet. And if we exceed that, we know there's no issues, and we do exceed that.
And how far is that hill?
Like I said, I don't know the exact distance of the hill, but our sight distances exceed 500 feet.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? One question I have is that you've got exit and entry on both curb cuts. Just curious why you're not having an entrance on, say, the southern end and an exit on the northern end.
It does go back to the fact that there is this left turn median already existing. So in my professional opinion as an engineer, there's no purpose served to restrict, say, a left turn movement in when there is a safe refuge area for a car to wait for any cues to go into the site at that, at that center median area. So this is strictly for convenience for the Cumberland Farms patrons. And again, we do have to go in front of Connecticut Department of Transportation for their final say. But we do hope to gain full access for both curb cuts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wolfen?
Thank you. The exit on the two curb cuts, will that, and you have to go before DOT to get that, but would your recommendations, would they make you do right turn only on the exits? I believe right now that's what it is.
They do have the ultimate jurisdiction over the right-of-way curb cuts, so that is a possibility, yes.
Thank you.
Ahead.
Just a quick question. So, just because this is such a busy road, have you looked at all at the increased volume of traffic coming in and out of these curb cuts, and whether that would have a negative impact on the flow of traffic in this area? Because the facility was there before, had both curb cuts, but it was, I think the frequency of cars entering and exiting was not quite what it might be in this configuration.
So, make sure I answer appropriately. We haven't done a full study yet because we want to, we'll be taking that in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. But I personally have done a number of these stores. I just did the one recently constructed on Broad Street in Meriden. And the major difference between the Villa Capri, and I mean, you can see the vast parking area. It's a destination. It's where people go for their weddings or bar mitzvahs or major life events. Cumberland Farms, as much as they would love to be associated with life events, they're a convenience, and they're a neighborhood convenience. They understand that their main source of travel and traffic is for passerby traffic. And from, again, we haven't done a full traffic study, but in my professional opinion, we would likely be reducing the amount of traffic from this event area use, and considering it's a convenience and a passerby attraction. It's not a main destination where people come from 4 towns over to this specific Cumberland Farms, but the Villa Capri, people will come from many miles away. And 150, I'm sure, patrons at once would visit the Villa Capri. As much as Cumberland Farms would like 150 people there, it's not reality. So to consider that it would be a major traffic draw, yes, in the sense when it's first constructed, people like it something new, but over time, it's not going to be a major detriment to the traffic already existing on Route 5.
Okay, thank you. And Casey, has the staff from the town looked into that at all, or is that burden on the applicant?
In terms of the traffic generation,
Yeah,
when they present to the Planning and Zoning Commission, they will have to, if there are more than 100 peak hour vehicle trips, they would need a special permit. If there aren't, then they wouldn't, but they would have to, our town engineers would have to have a comfort level that that's correct. I would agree that generally, well, I'm not a traffic engineer. It's likely that a use like Villa Capri had high density, less frequent uses, so a lot of traffic at once, but less often, whereas this may have more traffic generally, but a little bit more spread out. There probably will be some high demand in the beginning, but both we and the state will make sure that that gets addressed over the course of that process. So if there was one thing that I was, and this is more of a planning and zoning issue, but I guess a question that could be asked is, one thing, or I will mention, the Planning and Zoning Commission will ask that they look at internal connections with other properties to make some of that circulation a little bit easier and to kind of dilute the vehicles.
perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
If I can add to that is part of the conversation, Mr. Chairman and members, that we've had with staff, and it's something that we'll be offering at the P&Z level, which is that interconnectivity with other parcels. It may not be there now, but we'll offer it so if the neighboring properties ever come in for development, that easement or that opportunity exists. And again, I think as you all well know, this is step one. I mean, we need your consent to go to step 2, which is hopefully to go in front of P&Z. We'll have to present all the traffic information at that point. And even if the Planning and Zoning Commission found that this site met all its requirements, we still have to go to DOT, and they have to make a determination as to whether or not the 2 curb cuts work, whether they work with full access. So this is the first of a long road to hoe, but we think that it's appropriate, obviously, to come here and let you know that just from the operational perspective, from a safety perspective, from the fact that it's, as your engineer points out, it's desirable for fueling facilities to to have the 2 access drives. We're here to hopefully get past step 1.
You can-
I'm good for comments, so my biggest comment here is, right now you're located, I call it the old Thorntons, but you're located on that corner. Ives Road in North Colony. I can see this only as an improvement because that corner is horrendous. And hopefully, and I know we can't make these judgments now, no other gas station will move into that facility because it's horrible there.
4 curb cuts.
I don't care, with all them lights and turns, maybe I'm getting a little bit older, but I'll tell you something. This is going to be an improvement.
Can I ask one more question? Sure. Sorry. In lines of improvement, you know what would have been helpful? You've got a zoning chart here that you fit everything in terms of the zoning chart. And were you saying that Villa Capri did not fit everything? That
In terms of setbacks, this is 1976 was when they did the redevelopment.
coverage, and there was a couple other things that I think I had heard
The,
in this presentation.
Again, as the standards change, obviously you become non-conforming as to the standards. So this was, I think the point that Mark's trying to make is the fact that, this particular proposal should make this first hurdle when we go in front of P&Z will be compliant, other than the one request we're making, which is to vary the access limitation.
So you're moving from a more non-compliant to more compliant?
Correct. Yeah. Usually a good thing.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You can sit down now. You have anything else to say, Mr.
I don't.
Senator?
Thank you.
Does anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of this application? Anyone wish to speak against this application? Seeing none, I close the public hearing and leave it to the commission for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, the goal of our board is to go and make things more conforming with our regulations, and this proposal is going to make this more conforming. They would actually have to go to the state to seek permission to make it a single curb cut. And the volume of traffic here, and with all due respect to the senior engineer, I think that the hill does make a difference, and I think having 2 curb cuts here makes sense for this particular piece of property, and therefore I vote that we, and for all the other reasons that are on the record, I vote that we go ahead and approve this variant as a better use of the property to avoid a constraint of trade.
Second.
Motion to approve, Mr. Wolfer.
Yes to approve.
Mr. Knickerbocker.
Yes to approve.
Mr. Rozak.
Yes.
Mr. Rice.
Yes.
Mr. Bernie.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next hearing, 16002, special exception at 993 Yale Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, per section 4.1.d.7, someone may apply for a special exception to allow a stable, still limited to a maximum of 2 horses, ponies, that exceeds 300 square feet in area and 10 feet in height. The proposed area, if the stable, is 720 square feet. Please note that the height portion of the special exception request was included in error. The proposed stable is compliant with the 10-foot height restriction.
Thank you, Mr. Reddick. Go ahead with your application.
Yes, good evening. For the record, my name is Joan Malloy. I'm an attorney with the firm of Laughlin Fitzgerald. Our office is located at 150 South Main Street here in Wallingford. And present with me at the table is Mr. Raymond Johnson. This is an application for a special exception to permit a horse stable. If you had an opportunity to look at the survey that was submitted with the application, you realize that this is approximately 5-acre parcel, so it is a fairly significant size located in an R18 zone, which normally requires 20,000 square foot lots. Also included with the application is some information about the proposed building, the barn that they would like to build. It gave you some architectural information, also shows that the interior of the building has a provision for 2 stalls, a tack room, and a feed storage area. So it just is simply going to contain, if I can call it, the essentials that would be attributable to having horses on your property. My client, in addition to those 2 things, did contact a couple of his neighbors, and they have given us something in writing indicating that they have no objection to the granting of the application. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to submit those now.
Certainly. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have nothing further at this time. It's a fairly simple and straightforward application. Hopefully we'll talk less than my other counsel who have made presentations tonight. We are here to answer any questions, should you have them.
Commission have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Desjardins.
Just one brief question. I didn't see the document yet from the neighbors. But looking at the site plan,
Yes.
it looks like there's a number of other properties whose backyard sort of abuts the property. Would this be visible from any of those? And have all of them pretty much signed off?
All of them have given notice. We're not aware of any objections to it. Obviously, if there's anybody here tonight, we will learn this. But I believe that this property is fairly secluded. Mr. Johnson could confirm that, obviously. But the area is fenced, some well-vegetated in the area, so that we think it is going to be located in a way that's not going to create any issues for the neighbors.
Okay, so there's a fence along?
Yeah.
Okay,
There's a fence, and there's quite an elevation change.
okay,
Everybody's yards run down a hill. I'm at the bottom.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Mr. Puzo.
Mr. Chairman, I've been out to the property and walked through it. I see this as a good use for the property and the family.
Any other questions? Is anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of this application? Anyone wish to speak against it? Seeing none, I close the public hearing and open it to the commission for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve this application, better use of the property without altering the character of the neighborhood.
Second.
Before we second, I did want to point out that there is property abutted by a Jessica Knickerbocker who is no relation to me, so I'm not going to be recusing myself. I will be going ahead and voting.
There you go.
I doubt it will make a difference, my vote.
Okay, motion to approve, Mr. Wolfer.
Yes to approve.
Mr. Knickerbocker.
Yes to approve.
Mr. Ruzek.
Yes.
Mr. Reith.
Yes.
Mr. Bernie.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Next
My
application.
vote didn't make a difference.
We appreciated it anyway.
Next application is 16003 at 367 Washington Street.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recommend that you hear 16003A and B and 16-004 simultaneously, and then act on them separately just because
Right, so
they're,
all the same property, basically? Yeah.
it's one project.
Yes, okay. So it's 16003A and B and 16004.
Mr. Chairman, please see additional attachments regarding the subject application and application 16004 below, including memorandum from Malone and McBroom dated February 8, 2016, regarding parking needs, additional architectural information, and a conceptual site plan dated February 8, 2016. This proposal and the proposal below are part of one overall multifamily development project, but are on separate abutting properties based on a modified property lines. Therefore, the regulations apply to each future property individually. This application involves two parts, A and B. Because separate applications were submitted based on the different original properties involved and is associated with application 16004 as part of one larger development concept, but which will remain on a separate property. Please note that upon further consideration and discussion with this office, it is this office understanding that only the parking variances are still being requested. The variance applications for height and unit composition are expected to be withdrawn. The project at 367 Washington Street and 75 Parker Street involves demolition of the existing industrial buildings and construction of two buildings containing 136 residential units, 16 studio apartments, and 120 one-bedroom apartments to be constructed under the recently approved DA downtown apartment overlay zone. For this development, they are requesting to construct 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling, where 1 3/4 spaces are required, which would amount to a requirement of 204 spaces where 238 are required. The conceptual plan shows construction of 205 spaces. And then the staff's comments for 16004. The project at 53 Parker Street involves an addition onto a former mill that was converted to residential units under the adaptive reuse to multifamily provision, section 6.16 of zoning regulations. Under this provision, the project proposes to add 75 dwelling units, 55 one-bedroom and 22 bedroom to the existing 118 existing one-bedroom units. For this project, similar to the above application, the applicant is also requesting to construct 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit, where 1 3/4 per one-bedroom apartment and 2.25 spaces per two-bedroom apartment are required, which would amount to a requirement of 290 spaces where 348 are required. The conceptual plan shows construction of 307 spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. You explain your application, please?
Sure. For the record, my name is Timothy Lee. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Fasano, Ippolito, and Lee with an office in New Haven. With me to my left is Dan Krober. He is an engineer with Malone and McBroom. Since we just heard a very thorough summary of what this project's about and took about everything I was going to tell you, let me just hit the highlights. For the record, I do have the letter withdrawing the variance request for the height and also the variance request for the composition of the units. I will submit those to Casey upon the conclusion of the hearing. So that being said, we're here tonight just requesting a variance of the parking ratio. With regard to the proposal, we represent an individual by the name of Alex Vigliotti, who is a developer in the greater New Haven area. He specializes in constructing apartment complexes and has apartments in Wallingford, North Haven, New Haven, East Haven, and Brantford. He is looking to expand the existing Parker Place in Wallingford and construct new apartments on the adjoining parcels that he's got a contract to purchase in order to take advantage of the development of the new train station. So although it's not a transit-oriented development, it is a development that is looking to take advantage of its proximity to the train station to market towards commuters. People will take the train into Hartford. People will take the train into New Haven. Because of the proximity of the project to the train station, we think that the variances reducing the parking ratios would be appropriate in this case. When the project is completed, there will be a total of 329 units between the three properties that are before you tonight. There'll be a total of 20 two-bedroom units, 71 studio units, and 238 one-bedroom units. Under the Wallingford parking regulations, the development would require a total of 586 parking spaces. With the proposed variance, if the board were to grant the variances, it would reduce the parking requirement to 494 parking spaces. The site plan that we have before you tonight proposes a total of 512 parking spaces, so we're a little in excess of what would be required if the board were to see fit to grant the variance. What I'd like to do at this point in time is turn the presentation over to Dan Krober, who can take you through the site plan. Once he's taking you to the site plan, I'll come back and address the rationale for granting the variances.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Dan Krober. I'm a professional engineer licensed here in the state of Connecticut. I work with the firm Milano McBroom. Our office is at 99 Realty Drive in Cheshire. I also happen to be a resident of Wallingford, so this project is actually pretty exciting to me as being a fellow resident in town. So what I'm going to do first is just make sure everybody understands where this project is. We have Parker Place located here, and we have Washington Street, and then on the other side, Hosford Street is on that side. North is to the right on this plan. We have the cemetery here, and then we have Route 5 over here. In the train station that Tim was speaking of is located here on this property, so very closely adjacent to this property. You'll see here, this is 53 Parker Street, the existing composition of that site. As Tim mentioned, there's an existing apartment building on here. In this portion of the building, there's 118 single bedroom, one bedroom units that are there now, and on the side here, there's two bedroom units on the side of the building. This site has obviously been like this for a while. It was developed as part of the adaptive reuse. In my personal opinion, it's a fantastic use of that regulation. Really is a kind of the kind of project that I'd like to see in town. If you're not familiar with the architecture, this is the existing building. You can see beautiful windows, a nice brick building. Inside, although I haven't been inside, I've been told it's a very nice building, wood beams throughout. Just the context of what I'd love to see in Wallingford as far as apartments. So on the other side here, 75 Parker Street is this piece here, and 367 Washington Street is here. Both of these are owned by the same folks. The Davenport family runs a pipe storage and distribution, a plumbing distribution facility on both of these properties. Again, a great thing for the town. We've actually worked with them to relocate inside town to move these uses if this application process goes through. They're planning to relocate up to North Barnes Industrial Park on a vacant piece of land on Fairfield Boulevard. So a nice benefit to keep an existing property owner in business that's been here for some 30 years in town. And as part of the current plan of conservation and development update that's being done, as well as the TOD studies that are being done, this is the type of work, type of project that I think the town is really interested in seeing in close proximity to a train station. So I really think this project could be a kind of shining jewel for the town to show how the TOD could well impact sites around this area and really help drive some positive development in the future. So with that being said, I'm going to put up here, this is our rendering for the site. So this is just a rendered version of the revised plan that was provided in your packet. You'll see there's a lot of numbers here. I'm going to go through those, hopefully not in too much detail, but basically to show, this shows the parking
as currently required under the regulations, which is 1.75 for a one-bedroom, 2.25 for a two-bedroom. Show you how the variance reduces that and show you how the parking is parked on site now. So what you can see here on the 53 Parker Street, the idea is to make use of the adaptive reuse regulation once again, which allows for an addition on an existing building. This would be the addition. We feel like this meets the regulations, the size, the density, and such meets those regulations. So this would be a 4-story building. Similar in, although the elevations of this building aren't finalized, the idea would be it certainly is going to complement the existing building that's there now. You'll see this is 4 stories. The new addition would also be 4 stories, much in the same context of this building here. So that would be supported by an expansion of the parking lot on either side of the building. There would then be a cross connection through the site. Actually, there's a modification being proposed. This is a lot line revision that would actually move this line where it is now, move it to here. So this would actually become the full piece now. So the parking would be located on this property. This lot line would stay. Right now, we think this would remain a singular parcel under the proposal. For the 75 and 367, the idea here would be to merge these 2 parcels. Ultimately merge the 2. This would create 1 parcel. And just recently, this property was rezoned as a DA overlay zone, downtown apartment. We presented very similar concept plans to the zoning commission as part of that, and it was pretty exciting to hear that some of the neighborhood actually was excited to see that the industrial use was actually going to go away, and that something like this, there were some positive comments from the neighborhood across the street that were excited. So I thought that was good to hear. As for these buildings, these would be a 3-story building, and I'll put up, these are 2 kind of schematic elevations right now that the architect is working toward. One, this is, you can see, is very much in the context of the existing building, a brick facade, broken up. This would be kind of the same idea, but a more contemporary look. Just wanted to bring these out. This is kind of the 2 thought processes that the architect is going through, but this is the context of what they're thinking about these buildings to be. And then the parking, as we show on here, again, pretty similar here. We show a band of parking, kind of linear parking, with a parking lot in the middle. We do think we're compliant with the landscaping, interior landscaping standards for parking lots, and we've attempted to make a very compliant plan with the exception of the 1.5 spaces per unit variance that we're requesting tonight. Other than that, I think we are compliant in every other way with both the DA and the adaptive reuse. So with that, I'm going to go through just some numbers here, and then I'm going to give you the basis of why we think the parking numbers are a pretty good fit for this site. So this site here, we are proposing 136 units, 68 units in each building, 8 studios, 61 bedroom units. If we were to go to the 1.75 per a 1-bedroom unit, there's a requirement for 238 spaces. At 1.5 spaces per unit, we'd be required, if the variance is granted, to have 204 spaces on this site. Right now, this plan shows 205. So we could see that the parking is pretty dense on the site. There's not a lot of extra room. We could hypothetically park in this area here where we're proposing to have a recreation space, a clubhouse for the use. We could, if we really needed to, get additional parking there. But we're asking the commission to grant essentially a variance for 34 required parking spaces on this site to go to that 1.5. On the other site, we're proposing 193 units, so combining the existing 118 units that would remain, the two bedrooms would be removed, and we put the addition on. Going through that same logic, there would be 348 spaces required by the current regulation, where with the variance there would be 290. That's a variance of 58 parking spaces. We are showing, a couple things to note, we are showing 307 spaces if you were to add the existing as well as the proposed. One thing that we have done is taken the liberty to, right now, where the existing parking lot really doesn't have any landscaping interior to the parking lot, we've taken and we've added trees to become compliant with the regulations, to remove that nonconformity in the existing parking lot. Try to introduce a more beautiful landscape there. We also are removing one parking space that, per the regulation, wouldn't be allowed in that setback area. So overall, like Attorney Lee had suggested, the two properties combined, we're asking for a reduction of 98 spaces of parking. Now, we did submit a memorandum. We had our traffic engineers pull together a document to try to make sure that this 1.5 parking spaces per unit was appropriate. So we actually had a great test fit here because we have an existing site that's been there for many, many years. Alex, the owner of the property, has long said that the property is very much overparked. A lot of the parking is vacant. So what we did is we went out to the site on 3 occasions the week of February. We were out there February 5th, February 6th, and then Super Bowl Sunday, February 7th. We found that the maximum amount of cars parked on site was 139 spaces. 139 cars were parked on site. There were 97 vacant parking spaces on site. So what we did is we took that, prorated it, took the ratio of 139 cars parked there on site to the, yeah, absolutely. Compared to the 120 spaces or 120 units that are currently on the site. That comes out to a ratio of 1.16 parked vehicles per unit. Or if we looked at the bedroom count, so it would be 1.14 parked vehicles per bedroom on site. So we're asking for 1.5 parking spaces per unit. So we certainly think that that is well in the confines of the variance that we're requesting. In addition, we looked at some industry standard numbers. The Institute of Transportation Engineers has a standard for residential condos/townhouses. They recommend an average, or say that an average parking peak demand is 1.38 vehicles per unit. That's a condo or a townhouse. If you looked at a low to mid-rise apartment, the parking demand would be 1.23 vehicles per dwelling unit, with a 95% confidence level of 1.37 spaces per unit. So all these numbers are below the 1.5. They're below, certainly below what's out there now as kind of our test project here for the last number of years. And what we also know is that the train station is coming. And the obvious impact of the train station is we're really hoping that we're going to attract folks that are going to want to use transit and use mass transit, and maybe they won't have a vehicle at all. Maybe they'll have one vehicle. But the idea is the TOD should drive down the parking demand. So with all this being said, we think that 1.5 spaces per unit is certainly an acceptable number for the site to handle. So with that, back to Tim.
Well, as Dan said, we're very excited about this project. The developer's excited about the project. I think the town is generally excited about the project, and we hope you're excited about the project. And if you are, there certainly is enough justification to support the granting of these variances. As noted in the presentation, this property is uniquely situated close to the train station. It's been developed with an eye of taking advantage of the commuters who are going to ride the rails and hopefully live at this complex and ride the rails. So due to its unique location next to the train station, we think that the variances are supportable for that reason. In addition, the town is considering its own TOD regulations, and in the town's regulations, the parking ratio that has been discussed is 1.5, and in other TOD districts throughout the state, parking ratios, it's not uncommon to have a parking ratio of 1.5 spaces per unit. So once again, I think based on the proximity of this project to the train station, although it's not technically a TOD district, I think we can adopt the rationale of those TOD districts in supporting this parking ratio. Thirdly, Dan briefly went through the study that Malone and McBroom did, but based on the actual traffic parking counts at this site, the existing development is over parked. There's in excess of 80 some odd parking spaces that go unused based on the Millennium Room study. So we feel based on that over parking of the current site, the variances would be justified on that basis alone. Finally, as Dan mentioned, we are making improvements to the existing Parker Place parking situation. As Dan said, the existing parking place parking does not have any landscaping, does not have the landscape buffers. It predated the regulations that required those things. However, as part of this development, we are putting in the landscape buffers, we are putting in the trees. So we hope to improve an existing non-conforming situation by bringing that landscaping to the Parker Place parking lot. If anybody has questions for Dan and I, we'll do our best to answer them.
Mr. Desjardins?
Thank you. I think this is a really exciting and positive development for the town. But I wouldn't feel like I was doing diligence unless I asked. Is there any other way to get additional parking on the property? And the only reason I ask is because I see we've got a proposed clubhouse and recreational facilities. And so if a resident of one of these buildings wanted to use those facilities and have folks come in from around town where maybe the train wasn't the most appropriate way to get there, we just wanted to make sure there was going to be a place for them to park that isn't the commuter lot for the train station next door, because we want that open for commuters.
A couple different responses. One, we do have an excess of parking spaces over what would be required. Yeah, under our rationale, I think there was 494 parking spaces that, pardon me, yeah, 494 parking spaces under a ratio of 1.5. This site is proposing 512 parking spaces, so we do have, 18 parking spaces over and above that. Certainly, we could eliminate some of those amenities, the clubhouse, some of the green area, and create additional parking spaces by limiting those areas, but that's obviously not what we want to do, because part of the benefit of being close to the railroad is to reduce car traffic, and if they have a clubhouse, if they have a gym on site, it means they don't need a car to drive somewhere else in town to go to a gym or somewhere else in town to go hang out. So we think that we don't want to eliminate those amenities because we think that leads to one, a nicer development, and also a reduction in need for cars and therefore parking spaces.
Thank you.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Certainly.
Thank you. The study that you did Super Bowl weekend, you did it at Parker Place Apartments. Do you know what the vacancy is at Parker Place Apartments?
Yeah, it's 118 out of the 120 units are currently occupied, so 2 vacant spaces.
The other thing is there a reason you have to put in so many units? Like if you were to cut down on your units, you could hit the 175 easy.
That's right. But once again, there's an economic reality to any development in which you need a certain number of units to cover the cost of development and cover the cost of acquisition of the land. But that being said, in addition to those, or irrespective of those issues, we think that the 1.5 parking ratio works for this type of development based on its proximity to the railroad station, its similarity to TOD regulations, and the fact that we did an actual count of the existing Parker Place, and it was over-parked by about 80 parking spaces.
And then the other question that I have is my last question is, you know, I get that you want to be able to have a lot of units so that you can make a lot of money, and they don't use a lot of parking at the other places, but what's the hardship here?
Well, I think the hardship is the uniquely situated property being close to the railroad station. I mean, you have a new railroad station. We're adjacent to that railroad station. We are proposing a development that is designed to take advantage of that railroad station. Other properties in town aren't close to the railroad station. They're not going to be able to take advantage of the proximity to the railroad station. People who live in other apartments and complexes in town aren't going to be able to walk out their front door, cross the street, get on a train, go to work in Hartford, go to work in in New Haven. So I think the proximity to the train station is a factor the board can consider when it decides the issue of hardship.
Anyone else? Mr. Puzo?
Do you know what the current demand is for ridership from your residents now? There's a train station just, a mile down the road, so that's walking distance still.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
And just like to add that I have been out to the property and looked at it, and normally that parking lot is not occupied to its full potential. But there is on, I think, Hosford Street, you have that blocked off currently for entrance and exit. Will that be opened up for residents when you complete the project to come out on Hosford Street instead out on Parker?
Yes, correct. We will open all three, so all three of the parking lots will come out on Hosford. There will be access on Hosford.
It won't be blocked off. Currently, you have it gated, or there's like a chain or something in the way there that...
No, that would not be changed.
It'll be full access both ways?
Correct.
Okay.
I got a couple questions. Are you going to be coming back in front of us for the height variance, since you're sticking with the parking for right now?
No. As Dan mentioned, we went to planning and zoning about 2 months ago and presented similar schematic plans to them. And then we were anxious to get an application in front of ZBA, so the architect told us the building would be 34 feet high or 33 feet high, so we submitted the variance application based on that. But since the time we filed the application, we had the engineer go back, or the architect go back and kind of redesign the site plan. So by redesigning the site plan, it eliminated the need for the height variances. So we do not intend to seek a height variance. We don't need to seek a height variance at all.
Okay. Number two, Parker Place was a condo complex at one time. Correct. These are all going to be sticking with what you got going on there now, apartments, or is the new section going to be condos, or is this all going to be apartment rental, or?
It's all designed to be apartment rentals, no condos.
And what's time frame? I know this is just the beginning of it because there's a lot still that has to go on. But what are you guys looking at for time frame for?
Well, if we receive approval here, we'd need to go to planning and zoning for the special permit. We'd hope to be there in April or May. And if that gets approved, as Dan mentioned, Davenport is there right now. Davenport received its planning and zoning approval a couple months ago to relocate somewhere else in town. They would need to get their, construction going and move out to their new location, and then we'd be able to we'd be able to start the Parker Place stuff now, or the other stuff now. All told, I think about 2 years from completion.
Sounds about right.
And just probably from what I'm pretty sure about is when the new train station's in, I do believe the parking there is you're going to have a permit or pay to park there to use the train. I noticed other stations, West Haven, stuff like that. It's all that way. So I don't think anybody's just going to be able to pull in there and park. Just to be able to use that if you're visiting.
Our development, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think you're going to be able to, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think you have to pay to park to use the train station.
I agree.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I have a real concern about the parking, because I could just see people, even the one-bedroom units or the studio apartments, they usually have a roomie, so there's 2 cars involved, and I just think it's going to be a nightmare trying to park in there, and then people are going to be parking on the street, and the police are going to be getting complaints, and I don't know. It just seems like too few parking spaces for this big project. That's my feeling on it.
Well, I certainly understand the concern. The only thing I would point out is that the existing Parker Place development consists of 120 units, 118 one-bedroom units and two two-bedroom units. And based on our real-life experience at Parker Place, we are overparked by some 80 some odd parking spaces. So even if you applied the 1.5 ratio that we're asking you for the existing Parker Place, we would easily, the demand would easily satisfy the number of parking spaces that are there. So I think based on the practical effect of what's going on now, 1.5 works. And we think once the train station goes in, and obviously our development is geared towards being next to the train station, that really is going to separate us from other apartment complexes and with respect to the parking calculations.
Thank you. Anyone have any further questions? No? Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of the application? Against the application? Seeing none, I close the public hearing and ask the commission for whatever they want to input.
Mr. Chairman, I only heard an economic hardship. I really didn't hear a hardship. I think being close to a train station isn't a hardship. And for that reason, I make a motion to deny, as we're not allowed to do variances based on economic hardships. And so I would make a motion to deny all three applications which are asking for parking at this point. That's 16-003A, 16-003B, and 16-004.
Anyone want to second that? No seconds again. You want to withdraw the?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to approve the application on 16003A, better use of the property. I think this is good for that piece of property. I think it's going to be maybe jumpstart some more development in town. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I second that.
Motion to approve. This is for 16003A. Motion to approve, Mr. Wolfer.
Yes to approve.
Mr. Knickerbocker.
No.
Mr. Ruzek.
Yes.
Mr. Rice.
Yes.
Mr. Burney.
No.
Okay, so what that means is that the motion did not carry.
Correct.
The motion to approve did not carry, and the motion to deny did not move forward, so it means that the application is not approved.
Sorry about that.
There's two more applications because of the way that we did this.
Mrs.
We're going to vote on 16003B.
You want to try again, Jeff?
I don't want to, should I try again?
If you make a motion to deny and that motion doesn't carry, then you would follow that procedurally with a motion to approve and see if that carries.
Can we just do the motion to approve to see if that carries?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve 16-003B. Again, better use of the property.
Second.
This motion to approve, it's 16003B. Okay, Mr. Wolfer.
Yes to approve.
Mr. Knickerbocker.
No.
Mr. Ruzek.
Yes.
Mr. Rice.
Yes.
Mr. Burney.
No.
It's denied.
Next, we vote on 16004.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve 16004. Again, better use of the property.
Second that.
Okay, motion to approve 16-004. Mr. Wolfer.
Yes to approve.
Mr. Knickerbocker.
No.
Mr. Ruzek.
Yes.
Mr. Rice.
Yes.
Mr. Burney.
No.
Motion denied.
Next item on the agenda is approval of last month's minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve January 19th meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman?
Should we vote?
Before you do that, Casey, can you put on next month's agenda election officers, or would you
Yes.
like me to send you an email?
No, I will,
Okay.
I will do that. And just a quick reminder, I also provided you with the sign-up sheet for the
Right.
CPZA dinner, if you're interested.
Are any of the commissioners interested in attending that?
You can let me know. It's a good dinner, I hear.
Do we have to remove to adjourn? We didn't do that yet.
Nobody seconded it. I did.
Yes.
Then I second it.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.